Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and that's Maggie. Today's topic is how do you see yourself, and sort of taking a personal inventory and being open to the surprises that arise when we take a neutral sort of perspective. So before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present, and let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing every cell and every organ and bringing vital life energy all throughout your being. And now let's exhale any tension, any stress, any negativity, fatigue. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating all your cells, electrifying your electrons and molecules, and connecting you with the world beyond. And as you exhale any remaining fatigue, negativity, stress, tension. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Really softly feel the tingling of your fingers against your palms, that tickling sensation in your fingertips, in your palms. Just presence yourself to the deliciousness of being in this physical form. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Bring yourselves present right here, right now. It's great to be here with you this morning. We're talking about what do you see when you look at yourself, when you have a look at who you are. And this came up out of a session that I did with a client yesterday where we were just sort of taking a personal inventory, like looking in. And I invite you to do that, to take a moment, because I realize I don't do this either. You know, I have a sense, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, how I show up in the world or who I am or where there might be an Achilles heel that I could address, or, you know, as things arise, when I notice sticking points in my life, I address those points, but taking a bird's eye view of yourself. Good morning, Roslyn. Great to have you here as always. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about what do you see when you see yourself? Because I think so many of us are conditioned to be highly critical of ourselves, and we notice our foibles and our failures. Good morning, Suzanne. Great to have you here. And we don't necessarily notice the bigger picture, you know, like how all these pieces fit together, and you know, to see our strengths along with what we consider our strengths along with what we consider our weaknesses, and to notice. So how this came up is in the work that I do with folks, the sorry about that, the core connection work. The way it seems to work is, and probably any healing work works by peeling off the most obvious layers first, you know, addressing the most obvious challenges first. Rosalind says, how do you see yourself? Is this the same topic along the lines of who am I? I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is, and that's a wonderful, wonderful question. I'm thinking more of, in this case, how do I see myself as, how do I show up in the world? Who am I? It becomes a really deep existential question about, you know, am I an identity? Am I a personality? Am I a spiritual presence? And, you know, I think that we're all of those things. I think in this case, I'm talking more about how do we show up in our day-to-day lives? You know, who are we in terms of the persona that we present to the world? And at least that was the intention for today's conversation, because when we notice our strengths and our weaknesses. And I'm just using those words, not like they're any kind of absolute, but when we notice, how do we show up? Like, to take an inventory of, what are the things that I would like to shift in my life, and what are the things that I haven't acknowledged in my life, as far as the communications I have, or the impact I have in the world, or that I desire to have. Those kinds of questions is what I was thinking we could focus on today. Good morning, Robert. A busy morning, huh? Well, welcome. I'm glad you made it. We're talking about a personal inventory, to just be looking at ourselves as if we were looking at ourselves from the outside in, because we tend to be overly critical of ourselves and not necessarily recognize the bigger picture. And so, or in other cases, we tend to over idealize ourselves and not recognize maybe our vulnerabilities or sensitivities, or whatever. So join, welcome. Uh, Hello, good morning, beautiful soul. Always good to see you and your beautiful smile. How kind you are. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. And welcome, Dennis. Good morning. So we're talking about having a broader perspective on who we are, and one of the ways, maybe not who we are in an essential sense, but how we show up in the world. And taking the perspective of an outside person observing us, or seeing us, what would we see? And I think it's an interesting exercise, because I think there are insights available to us from the perspective of someone outside ourselves. And I know it's another thought experiment, right? That's that's what we do here, is have these thought experiments and conversations. But what would you notice about you? Like, how would you see yourself if you were looking from the outside in? If it were somebody else that was doing the things that you're doing in the world, what would your opinion be of them? And I think it's a powerful exercise, because I think there's an opportunity, to be looking from the outside in and the inside out, both at the same time, like to juxtapose those two perspectives, to gain perspective, to gain a broader vantage point, to maybe give yourself some recognition for the way you show up in the world, like if you were an outsider observing your interactions with your friends, or with your pets, or with your household, or with your work, or with your free time, or just to be on the outside in, maybe you would see, wow, you know what, that person's pretty cool. Look at some of those, look at what that person's doing. Look at how that person interacts with other people. And this isn't with an intention to be egocentric, but to gain perspective on ourselves. And sometimes, maybe we would see something that would be like, wow, it would be really powerful to cultivate this other aspect of myself more, to notice that that this person, if you had a real insight into them, what would you notice about them? Well, maybe they want to be able to be having a richer experience of life. there maybe this person is doing all these amazing things, but you're noticing that there's this place of longing in them, or a place of some emptiness that they're looking to fill. Or as you observe yourself from that kind of omniscient vantage point, to be able to recognize what it's a way for us to gain a little bit of distance from ourselves, enough to maybe see things a little bit more clearly. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome. Great to have you here. So as we think about that, I'm just thinking, like what would that look like? What does it look like for you to step back from yourself, as if you were an observer, as if you were another person that knew everything about the person that you are, up here looking at you, and saying, wow, look at the things that person is creating in the world. Look at the relationships that person has cultivated. Look at, like, how would you, being this person out here, observing this person over here, how would you be interpreting their life? How would you be evaluating? I mean, I think it gives us an opportunity for a couple things, to give ourselves the recognition that we might not otherwise give ourselves, to say, wow, that person that I'm seeing is kind. That person leads with an intention for connection, or that person um, is pretty resourceful. That person does does really make use of their skills and talents in a way that contributes to others. What other kinds of, what kinds of things do you see when you take a vantage point on yourself? Like, if you were you as an outsider observing you as a different person, what might you notice that you don't typically recognize in yourself? Because I don't know about you, I don't really spend a, a, a lot of time thinking about how I show up in the world. I think it can be a useful exercise to recognize where we would have some, where we might desire some growth, and also to acknowledge, hey, because we beat ourselves up so terribly. Hey, you know what? I'm not the horrible person that I've made myself out to be to myself. So Rosalind says, I used to see myself as someone who doesn't like to socialize. It's quite opposite, I found out. That's a wonderful revelation. Very good for you. How about that? I'm starting to notice I have more confidence to be myself and less judgment to act a certain way in a social setting. Congratulations for that, Rosalind. That's huge. So when we do have more confidence in ourselves, then we're more willing to act the way that we act in a social situation, and to be more authentic, which is really interesting. As we have greater self-acceptance, we act more authentically. It's really interesting. I just had this revelation as I was speaking, and I figured, okay, well, it came up, so I should share it. And one of the things that I noticed is, or that just came to me, is that one of the places that I feel most completely authentic is in my coaching relationships, in the relationships with my clients in through coaching, because then I am able to, I'm really given the freedom to be speaking what I see, and that's the venue for it. Like, it's not necessarily appropriate in a social venue to be speaking what you see all the time. um, and you don't have permission, you don't have the invitation to be speaking what you see necessarily in social circumstances, right? And so there's a richness that I so embrace and appreciate and cherish with my clients, because we get to have this deeply authentic, vulnerable relationship. You know, it's very real, and that's something that I recognize, that I really cherish. Joyne says, I wish I knew how to recognize my bad habits a bit more. I'll try to, I will have to try to stand outside myself more and observe myself. So you might surprise yourself to notice not just what you are considering bad habits, um, but what you might see the impact of those behaviors differently if you stand outside yourself to observe, to recognize, oh wow, that interaction, that person's really reactive, and you might see that reactivity in yourself, but you also may see some really marvelous traits that you don't typically acknowledge in yourself. I think I think in many cases, people are more inclined to be deeply self-critical to a paralyzing degree, more than they are self-aggrandizing, or more than they are um, complimentary to themselves. I think, though, that you do bring up a very good point, Joy, that there may be certain behaviors that we have that when we are able to observe them from the outside, we do get to see that perhaps we might prefer a different behavior. We might prefer to shift our behaviors because we see the consequences differently. This is, again, like I said, it's a thought exercise, but it is a way that we can literally gain a different perspective on ourselves, our habits, our behaviors, and our and maybe even the responses that we get from others, maybe even the way that we're impacting others and the world. And I think we misguidedly use um, self-deprecation, just minimizing ourselves and our accomplishments and our characteristics. I think that we misuse that as like a false humility, as a way to keep ourselves small by giving ourselves all these awful messages about ourselves that are not necessarily accurate, but that, like, we have a negative bias typically about ourselves. So Joyne says, makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you. I will work on those. Good, good, good. So yes, because one of the things that I think is so important at this time in human history is that each of us rise to our purpose, that each of us be an expression of our soul's calling here at this time. And in order to do that, I think it requires a certain sense of alignment and integration with oneself, and to be able to come forward and speak and presence yourself in the world, and to have this strength of self and character, to be able to fulfill the thing that we came here to fulfill. The world needs us to be stepping into our power and purpose now more than ever. You know, it's like all hands on deck right now, and for the foreseeable future. And so we all get to show up, and if it supports us in showing up to be able to take this external perspective, great. You know, whatever tools we have the ability to use, the better. And Join says, I need to know how to let things go. I'm trying, but will focus more. Thank you so much. So here's the thing about trying to let things go. Trying is not doing. And um, it's like, how do you do without trying, right? It's a challenge, and there's a distinction also to look at here between doing and being. And what I tell people, works better for me anyway. I'm not an expert at letting go, but I am much more facile at expanding to include. So the things that I think I should be letting go of, maybe if I give myself permission to expand to include those things, the fact is that I'm then bigger than those things. I am much more. Those are no longer the things that define me. Those are the things that are part of me. And I do believe that given the right circumstances, any of us are capable of anything. And if we recognize that that's just how it is, that, you know, if in the perfect storm we could be capable of anything, even though we would hope that we might not be, you know, there could be that perfect set of circumstances that would drive us into anything, any behavior. When we expand to include that, it is a humbling experience, and it is an experience that allows us to have more room for for our own humanity, and consequently for the humanity of others. And Rosalind says, when thinking about a new project, I tend to share my ideas with a certain group of people and not others. When we do that, maybe we're looking for validation. Well, it could be that we're looking for validation, but the other thing is that when you have a new project and you're sharing ideas, I think it's important to be discriminating and discerning about who you share things with, because some people are dream killers, and they think it's their job to be showing you the potential downside for things. And when you're in the beginning of a new project, when you're formulating an idea, that idea can be really fragile. And to have to before that idea has any kind of embodiment, to have someone tell you that it's crazy or ridiculous, and you be susceptible to that vantage point when something is very new and very young and not fully formed, could be devastating. Perhaps it could stop you from going down a really long and dark road too, but it also could be ending ending your adventure. So as an example, uh, early on when I came up with my vision of the eco park, this is a vision that I have that is of a World's Fair type thing that is based on sustainability, that is a permanent World's Fair on the scale of the Disney franchises globally, that would be a global learning center and a resort kind of place where you can go like like you would to Disney, but here you would be able to learn about all kinds of sustainability technologies and techniques that exist and that are being developed. And it's just like this phantasmagorical place where you go and experience all these new things, learn without even knowing you're learning, and come away transformed, because it's so magical and full of wonder and opportunity and possibility. And early on, I was at a like a mastermind group, and I shared this idea, and there was a guy there that said, "You're never going to do that." And I could have allowed that to kill my dream. Instead I said, "Just watch me, and we'll see." Like, that was the birth, or responsible for the birth of the podcast that I have with my partner, my business partner, Scott Billy, called Sustainability Now. And I now have connections with uh, people all across the globe doing remarkable things related to sustainability that would have some representation in the eco park. And so it's evolving. And that's why when you say uh, you want to maybe be alert to who you share your dreams with, at least in the beginning stages, um, then maybe you do want validation. And then at some point, it is really important to go outside of that circle, to hear the skeptics, to hear the other vantage point, not to necessarily allow it to kill your dream, but perhaps to inform you about some of the potential obstacles you may encounter that may or may not be valuable. And so Joyce says, "Ah, hello, Birdie. What's the name?" And that is Maggie. And thank you, Rosalind, for tuning in and introducing Maggie. Maggie is the star of the show. She's sort of flying around the room right now, but yeah. So I don't know if you hear, she just was saying her name. Anyway, so maybe do this exercise for yourself, where you are a compassionate observer standing outside yourself, observing this person that you are showing up in the world, and notice if you recognize aspects of your being, or this person that you are showing up in the world, that you might not have otherwise recognized. And I think it's a gift to be able to give to yourself, and also from that vantage point to be looking at, um, from that outside observer place, to be looking at that person that is you, looking at that person's heart, and the longing they may have in their heart for um, different aspects of life that maybe they could enrich. So it's a radically different point of view from the point of view that beats us up for um, every little. Well, I'm trying to think of the word. Um, every little thing that we perceive as having done wrong, or things that we perceive as something that we could have done better. So I think that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live every weekday morning on Enlightened World Network on the Facebook page. And Maggie, come here, Meg. Come say goodbye. Come say goodbye to everybody. Come on. Come on. Here. So Maggie joins us, and she also wants to say thank you so much for being here with us and joining into the conversation. It's such a gift to be able to have this time with you all, and we both really appreciate it. So until next time, take a moment to see yourself from the outside, and to recognize the gifts that you bring to the world, and be generous to yourself and to others. Lots and lots of love.